Good afternoon. My name is Tim Goddard. I'm the town moderator here in Littleton. I'm joined by our town administrator, Anthony Ansaldi, for our town meeting preview show, which has proven to be popular over the years, and it's a good way to get some information on the articles before you get to town meeting. Just a reminder that the town meeting is going to be Tuesday evening, November 1st at 7 p.m. at the Charles K. Gymnasium, the middle school gymnasium on Russell Street. And you should have received your warrant booklet in the mail already. If you have it, you can call the town hall or it's online as well, that describes the 16 articles that are on this special town meeting warrant. It's a fairly short article by town meeting standards. Special town meetings are usually briefer than annual town meetings, and it's the case here. A lot of what you see on the town meeting is, I guess you'd call it routine business of the town, articles that need to be voted at the special town meeting in the fall, but they're not tremendously controversial. The town pays bills from prior fiscal years, Anthony, and moves money around from one fund to another, and a lot of things that are necessary but not necessarily controversial. Would you just give us a brief outline of kind of the scope of the warrant that the select board voted, Anthony? And then I know you've got some staff members queued up to speak to each of them, but give us a little overview, if you would.
Sure, we too. Thanks, Tim. It's great to be back with you. There's 16 articles. Two of those 16 are citizen petition articles. The first 5 articles are dealing with financial articles, bills of prior year, amend the FY23 operating budget, supplemental FY23 capital items from available funds. Article 4 is the capital stabilization fund transfer, and Article 5 is the Oak Hill stabilization fund transfer. The next 2 articles are, one is the senior center, Article 6, the senior citizen property tax work-off abatement that the select board increased from $1,000 to $1,500, and town meeting had taken prior action on this at another town meeting, so this is to codify those. Article 7, it's the same thing. It's the Veterans Property Tax Work-Off Abatement Program. Article 8 is the Community Preservation Fund donation transfer. Article 9 is the Community Fund Preservation Committee, their article, the FY23 supplemental article. Article 10 is to fund the collective bargaining agreement. And that was for the fire department. Article 11 is the classification and compensation plan amendment. Article 12 is the general bylaw amendment. Article 13 is an inclusionary housing bylaw. Article 14 is a street acceptance for Douglas Street. And Article 15 is the first citizen petition article, and that's to put a cap on the number of marijuana farms allowed in the town of Littleton. And Article 16 is a citizen petition from students at Littleton High School for a plastic bag town bylaw, a ban on plastic bags in the town.
Very good. Very good. And I think you can tell from the list that Anthony read that a number of these are very routine articles, if you will. The 2 tax work-off programs are, I think, good examples. The town's had the program for a number of years. This is simply a vote to increase the benefit that someone could earn from $1,000 to $1,500, and there's no amendment to the program itself.
Right. Correct.
So I think that there are a number of articles on. Just as a heads up, there are a number of articles here that I think lend themselves to a consent calendar approach, and we can ask town meeting to take a single affirmative vote on articles that are non-controversial, that are routine business, and we will in fact do that. We wouldn't include necessarily articles that are borrowings or zoning amendments or articles that have kind of more of an impact on the town. We want the voters to have the opportunity to debate those. Some of these, I think, in the interest of time, people, I think, will agree that we can vote them as a bundle and give them all a vote, but not spend a whole lot of time discussing them. And we wouldn't put the citizens' petitions subject to that as well. And just as a reminder to town meeting attendees, those who may be new to town meeting, those who've been coming for many years, just a reminder on the procedures. We have established a 10-minute limit for presentations, both in favor and opposed to a certain article. That's different than the 3 minutes per town meeting member to speak for or against an article. So if you have a formal presentation, you're limited to 10 minutes. And we ask to see those presentations ahead of time. Normally they're PowerPoints, and we have a few of those. So the presentations are limited to 10 minutes. Speaking for or against an article is a 3-minute limit, and we ask that people speak only once per article unless they have new information that's pertinent to the article. And we have a time limit, if you will, that we don't bring up any new business after 10:30 p.m. in the case of an evening town meeting, unless the moderator feels that there's a good likelihood of finishing before 11 or by 11 p.m. and town meeting agrees with that reasoning. Usually people say keep going, no matter what the hour. They don't want to come back for another evening. And we honestly, with this short of an agenda warrant, I don't think we're going to have any difficulty with that. And we're going to go again with the call of the articles procedure, whereby the moderator will read through each of the articles on the warrant by title. And if anyone raises an objection to handling them as a group and making them subject to a single affirmative vote expressing the unanimous consent of town meeting, people would have the opportunity to pull those aside and to bring them up in the normal course of business. But we've found that by handling the non-controversial articles that way, it gives us a little more time for some of the other articles. And as I mentioned, we wouldn't do either of the citizens' petitions that way, and we don't like to do borrowing articles. We don't like to do major zoning bylaw amendments in that fashion. But a lot of the business of this meeting, I guess, what would you say, Anthony, is fairly routine, important, necessary, but not controversial.
It is fairly routine, Tim. I agree, and certainly I don't think that we'll get to that point where you'll have to ask town meeting.
If we do, yeah, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
Bumping up against midnight. So I think, Anthony, you've got several financial articles coming up, and you've got the finance director queued up, do you, and waiting in the wings for us to?
I do, and to go over those first 5 articles, I'd like to kick it over to our finance director, Alicia Nunley-Benjamin, who will explain Articles 1 through 5.
So we're going to speak about Article 1, which is bills of prior year. Per Massachusetts General Law, it's Chapter 44, Section 64. Any bills that come in after prior year that don't have an encumbrance in place have to be voted. We have one for the Nagog Orchard for the electric bill and another one for the Nagog Orchard for the water bill. The town recently is not in the lease anymore, so we had to pick up those bills. They were unforeseen and we did not know the amount, so therefore those have to be voted for Article 1. Article 2, amend the fiscal year 2023 operating budget. In 2023, under Article 11 of the special town meeting, we're going to update Schedule A, the classification and compensation plan. There was a compensation study done, and we're going to shift people to where they should be. In addition to that, we're funding half the year with a new facilities manager position. We're adding some hours for the assistant library director, and we are adding a new position of an assistant town planner. Article 3, supplemental fiscal year 23 capital items from available funds. We are actually going to put $50,244 and transfer $166,794 for a total of $217,038. $166,794 is coming from capital stabilization. It is for the police department's communication center and infrastructure improvements. This was originally voted at annual town meeting for $600,000. The quote came in higher for a total of $766,794. The $50,244, which is for the replacement of the fire chief vehicle. It will be a hybrid vehicle, and that will be covered by raise and appropriate. Article 4, capital stabilization fund transfer. This is where we're going to transfer some funds from certified free cash to the capital stabilization fund to fund our capital projects that are coming up. Article 5 is a Oak Hill Stabilization Fund transfer for $160,922.51. The reason for the Oak Hill Stabilization transfer is we closed the Oak Hill cell tower fund per the Department of Revenue to the general fund. And the reason we did that is because cell tower agreements are not in the law as special revenue funds, therefore they belong to the general fund. And now we're just moving those funds we closed to a stabilization fund, still allowing conservation to use those funds as they have in the past.
Thank you, Alicia, for explaining Articles 1 through 5. And now, to explain Articles 6 and 7 is our Director of Elder and Human Services, Liz Tridiak, and our Chief Assessor, Kathy Miller.
Thanks, Anthony. We're so happy to be here. Again, I'm Liz Tridiak. I'm the Director of Elder and Human Services, and I'm joined by Kathy Miller, who is our Chief Assessor here in town. And we're here to talk about Article 6 and Article 7 on the town meeting warrant. Now, what are Articles 6 and 7? They are the Senior Citizen Property Tax Work-Off Abatement Program, and number 7 is the Veterans Property Tax Work-Off Abatement Program. So these are two very successful programs that we've had in town that the Department of Elder and Human Services and the Assessor's Office collaborate on to give seniors a break on their taxes. Kathy, do you want to tell us a little bit about what historically this program has been?
So seniors can sign up and they can do work in exchange. It's an abatement off their taxes, and they can get up. Previously, they could get $1,000 off their taxes, and we're increasing it this year to $1,500. And they can work in various departments, answering phones. They can work at the school system, painting. There's numerous jobs that they can do around town and get abated for their work.
So we're thrilled about this. In the past, our cap on the program has been much lower. Luckily, the legislature has increased the cap as the years have gone on. I think we started this program back in 2000, 2008, somewhere in the early 2000s. And since then, the cap has been increased. And so we're here with these two articles because we'd like the town of Littleton to keep up with the increases that the legislature is putting forward. So Articles 6 and 7 allow for the select board to vote on increasing the abatement amounts without having to go back to town meeting every single time. So that is Articles 6 and 7 on the town meeting warrant. Thank you, Kathy, for being here with me, and we'll hand it back over to Anthony.
Thank you, Liz and Kathy. And for Articles 8, 9, and 10, we're going to turn that back over to our Finance Director, Alicia Nunley Benjamin.
Hi. So Article 8 is for the Community Preservation Committee fund donation transfer. That's going to be for $437,000 to the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust. This is due to, from certified free cash, this is due to the Cooper Farm development, the Jones Meadow development, and the Weber Village development. These funds were all put into the general fund with the intent that they would go through the CPC to the Affordable Housing Trust. Article 9, Community Preservation Committee Fiscal Year 23. This one is taking a percentage for open space, 30%, historic resources, 15%, housing reserves, 15%, recreation reserves, 15%, and the undesignated or general reserve, 25%. The state match is actually higher than we estimated at around 32%. The reason we used a percentage instead of a dollar value is the state has not declared the exact amount yet, so we have used a percentage base. We, during annual town meeting, had estimated a lower amount, and that was a part of what you had voted. The difference is what will be split by these percentages. Article 10, fund collective bargaining. So Article 10 is here to fund the collective bargaining agreement between the Littleton Professional Firefighters Association in the amount of $188,622, with $38,732 for retroactive payments in fiscal year 22, and $149,890 to fund the fiscal year 2023 obligation. Back to you, Anthony.
Thank you once again, Alicia. And to explain Article 11 will be our Human Resources Director, Michelle Vibert.
Thanks, Anthony. Several years ago, the town hired a consultant to conduct a classification and compensation study to update the current salary grid for bylaw employees to reflect market rates. Over the past few months, the town has been able to finalize this study and work with the data that was presented to create a new compensation table. The new grid proposes 24 grades instead of 15, allowing for long-term growth for our existing employees within their positions and less difficulty in hiring new employees. The new salary grid is reflected on page 16 of the town meeting report. And with town meeting approval, this grid would go into effect on January 1st of 2023. Also part of Article 11 is on page 17, Schedules B, B1, C, C1, and D. These schedules were amended to reflect the increase in the minimum wage to $15 effective January 1st, 2023. Thank you, and back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Michelle. I have the pleasure of going through Article 12, which is really just a cleanup of general bylaw amendments. The first section is eliminating some committees that we no longer have in town. It's the Industrial Committee, the Committee on Roads, the Gypsy Moth Control Committee, and the Reuben Hoare Building Study Committee. And the second part of this article is amending some articles with funds that we no longer have, one being the Road Machinery Fund, the other being the disposition of fees and deeds or conveyances. And to explain Articles 13 and 14 is our town planner, Maren Toohill.
Thank you, Anthony. Article 13 on the November town meeting is a zoning bylaw amendment proposed by the Planning Board. It would amend our inclusionary housing zoning bylaw and would add A&R plans, or approval not required plans, to the list of plans that are required to include affordable housing. Right now, our inclusionary bylaw applies to subdivisions and special permits and multifamily housing of 6 or more units and requires 10% affordable units. This zoning bylaw amendment would add A&R plans to that requirement. The Planning Board held their public hearing on this and recommended it to town meeting floor. So it's a very short bylaw amendment, and it closes a loophole that we recently discovered. So the Planning Board hopes that you will support Article 13. Article 14 on the fall town meeting warrant is a street acceptance for the last portion of Douglas Street. Douglas Street is the last section of subdivision roadways in the Durkee Farm Estates and the Kay Estates subdivision. And this article proposes that town meeting accept this portion of Douglas Street as a town way. It signals that the construction for this development is now complete. Planning Board recommended to the Board of Selectmen that the town accept this as a public way. Planning Board hopes that you will support acceptance of Douglas Way at town meeting.
Thanks, Maren. So Tim, to wrap up, we have 2 articles that are both citizen petition articles. Article 15 is to put a cap on the number of marijuana farms here in Littleton. Now, Town Council has opined on this article, and it's a non-binding article. This would normally be done in a bylaw or a zoning type article, and this did not fall into that criteria.
Right. Maybe, Anthony, we could explain just, for people that are watching this, that the Select Board is obliged to accept any citizen's petition article that has the necessary signatures. I think it's
signatures, right.
100 signatures of registered voters.
For a special.
And at a special town meeting, so that they have to accept the language and everything as is, verbatim. The board can't try to fix somebody's language. So if the language is not precise, it sometimes doesn't accomplish what the petitioners want it to accomplish. In this case, they seek to put a cap on the number of marijuana facilities. which in order to do so, I mean, it's a perfectly legal purpose, but they need to do it in the form of a bylaw.
Exactly.
And not as expressed, it would be kind of a referendum, if you will, or just a non-binding expression of the will of town meeting that, yes, we would like to see a cap imposed on these type of facilities. The board could, if it passed, the board could say, okay, we'll work on a bylaw for a spring town meeting, or, conversely, if it failed, they could say, well, the opinion of town meeting is that we don't need a bylaw in this case.
Correct. Yeah, it was unclear because we don't have right now any marijuana farms here in Littleton, so,
Right.
and we can't change the language. As you said,
The
whatever.
definitions are, not correct in terms of the law, so
Correct.
it muddies the waters a bit. So this may be something that would come back at a future town meeting in a different form. As it is a non-binding article, if the proponents wish to speak to it, I would allow that. I would hope that in the interest of time, they would agree to make their comments brief, as well as any debate likewise would be somewhat brief, because we do have, business that town meeting needs to take action on right immediately following. And the history of town meetings is that we don't historically spend a lot of time debating questions that are not going to be effective, that there's really no legal effect to the vote one way or the other. But it's something I think a lot of times people don't understand the signature petitions. The requirements are different for an annual town meeting. You're only required to get 10 signatures, so the bar is a little higher for a special town meeting. But in all cases, I think that they'd be well advised to check with the town before circulating a petition for signature, because they're going to be married to whatever language they had people sign on the petition is what's going to go before town meeting. And the town's not going to improve it or, make changes, because, someone could say, you changed my petition from the way I worded it originally, and the
Correct.
board just, and Anthony, I'm sure, don't want to get involved in that.
That's true, Tim. And,
So-
and Article 16 is a good example of that. So Article 16 is an article that was presented by students at Littleton High School. And this is a plastic bag ban here in Littleton. And this is the first time, Tim, that we've seen an article relative to a plastic bag ban.
Right.
I think it was last annual that these students brought forth an article, or it was the prior town meeting.
Yeah.
And it was not in that proper format as
Exactly.
well.
So they went to school, so to speak, and presented it in the form of a bylaw, which town meeting can act upon, and other towns have acted upon as well. So that's what you see as Article 16. Now, the proponents of this article are that while they're all residents, they're students at Littleton High, none of them are registered voters. So our rule is that town meeting grants permission to non-voters that they wish to have speak at town meeting. So unless there's an objection to that, I don't think a vote would be necessary. Town meeting would normally allow non-residents to speak, as they do, with employees and consultants and anyone that is part of a presentation. Town meeting's usually pretty generous about hearing from them. And there'll be a presentation both in favor of Article 16 and in opposition to that. So I imagine this article will take the lion's share of the debate, so to speak, two fairly comprehensive presentations, and then there'll be the back and forth. But that's why we're at town meeting. So I think we're looking forward to that happening. And as I said, we'll use the consent calendar procedure, hopefully, for some of the rest of it. And I guess I just, again, remind people that the special town meeting is going to be on Tuesday, November 1st at 7 p.m. And please come out and participate and vote. And Anthony, I want to thank you again for doing this show. I think it's a service to the voters, and I particularly like the way that you've had staff members get involved in the presentation, because they're the ones that are out in the trenches doing the work, and
That's true.
they're the experts on the subject matter, and I think it's a service to the town. So
That's true. And
thank them for me as well.
Certainly will, Tim. And besides our department heads who spoke to these articles, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our staff and the town administrators Select Board's office, the Assistant Town Administrator, Ryan Ferrara, who does a great deal of work in putting this together and working through town meeting, as well as my staff, Diane Dickerson and Ashley Pinard. So thank you to them as well. And certainly, Tim, it's a pleasure. I know that we are the highest rated show on LCTV. So
I think it's sweeps week again. So,
right. So
yeah.
well, it was a
Good.
pleasure, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony, we'll see you all at town meeting, we hope, in a week. Thank you.